Good evening and welcome back. I will call this meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah. These meetings are usually pretty empty, so that's pretty cool to hear in unison. First, we've got approval of the memorandum of the May 6, 2019 regular meeting. A copy has been posted. Any discussion, or I take a motion?
Move to approve.
We've got a first from Councilor Spies, second from Councilor Suarez. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the memorandum of the May 6, 2019 regular town council meeting is approved by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Next, we have departmental May monthly reports. Reports are submitted by the town management staff for council review and posted on the town website, zionsville-in.gov. Any questions from any of the councilors on anything that they saw today in the...
I reserve the right to ask questions later.
Right, granted.
We didn't have much time to look at it.
Yeah, they came in today, so there's a few things going on.
I would second that.
Okay, we are going to postpone the presentation on Z-Works till a later meeting. Chief Knox, we've got a presentation of unit and departmental citation, please.
Thank you very much, President Garrett, council members, community. I appreciate that. Have the opportunity to present a recognition to Officer Josh Chapman here. Josh has been with the agency for approximately 6 years. You may recognize Josh as he's the ever-present person at most of our community special events. He's on the bicycle patrol. He's patrolled for a number of years, and for about the last 5 years, he's been our police partner at the Zionsville High School, as what most people refer to as an SRO. Josh is leaving the agency. He's accepted a job with Homeland Security. And so he'll be traveling to sunny South California here very soon. So, in recognition, and it's a distinct honor that I give this to Josh, Josh has given 110% in everything he ever does. So in recognition, Officer Joshua Chapman for exceptional service and dedication to the town of Zionsville and the Zionsville Police Department, 2013 to 2019. It's my honor to give this to you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Josh. Okay, next up we've got requests to speak. We're going to do something, well, not different, but back to how we normally handle these, where we allow 15 minutes of requests to speak. What I have done is, of all the requests that we've gotten, we've put them in 2 categories, for and against. Cindy has selected 3 individuals against, because there was a larger stack, and 2 who will be in favor of this project. So I'll read all the names that will be speaking. We'll go in this order. First, speaking in opposition, we've got Mark Zalanis, Heather Lusk, and Marcia Angstad. And when they are each finished, we've got Dave Franz and Larry Jones. Both will be speaking in favor of the project. Each person will be given 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. I will time you and give you a 1-minute warning. You're welcome to your entire 3 minutes. Last time we did a really good job of being respectful of all the speakers, regardless of the side. I got a lot of positive feedback on that, so I'd ask we do the same thing here as we let our speakers go. So, Mark, if you're available, I'll have you up first, and then we've got Heather and Marcia.
All right, thank you, President Garrett, council members.
If you give your address for the record, please, Mark. Thank you.
Mark Salonis, my wife Sally and I live at 40 South 3rd Street here in Zionsville. We've been here for 22 years, now a third of our lives. Thank you. But we, like a lot of other residents here and outside and upstairs, are here to really say that we're not against development here in Zionsville, but are for appropriate development, and we feel this is not appropriate development. A little brief history. The developer first unveiled the project to the VRA board on February 28th, 18 months after starting the process with the town. The J.C. Hart Group was adamant from the very beginning that they would not change it. They stated the quote, "This is it." They made the same statement regarding the building's size and scope at all of the public meetings. At the last town council meeting, Matt Price reached out to the VRA for a meeting, which we appreciate. But after Mrs. Hoag, Dahl, and Hart spent time reiterating that this is the only design that they are willing to consider, Matt Price finally showed up 40 minutes late to his own meeting. The revelation that came out in the meeting is that Mr. Dahl and Mr. Hoag only requested RFPs from developers that do high-density, large apartments. This is certainly within their prerogative, but it shows that they entered into this process with a very narrow vision. We have proven since that meeting that we know that there are other viable options for development on this property given the financial and physical constraints. We acknowledge that the landowner has a right to seek the maximum amount for their property, and developers have a right to seek the highest profit. But we, the citizens, also have rights, as the U.S. Supreme Court explicitly recognized in 1978. In the Penn Central case, the court's majority observed that it is not in dispute that states and cities may restrict what happens on private property to preserve the character and desirable aesthetic features of a city. And that's Penn Central Transportation Company versus the City of New York, 438 U.S. 104. Also, Justice William Douglas stated in another Supreme Court decision, Berman versus Parker, in the quote, "The concept of the public welfare is broad and inclusive. The values it represents are spiritual, as well as physical, aesthetic, as well as monetary. It is within the power of the legislature to determine that the community should be beautiful, as well as healthy, spacious, as well as clean, well-balanced, as well as carefully patrolled." And that's Berman versus Parker, 348 U.S. 26. This terminology aligns with our Zionsville PUD ordinance, which states, "A planned unit development should encourage compatibility with surrounding areas. A planned unit development should preserve the natural amenities of the land through conservation areas and open spaces. A planned unit development should provide an environment of stable and desirable character, quote, not out of the character with surrounding neighborhoods."
Thank you, Mr. Zalanis. Appreciate your time.
All right.
Heather Lusk, you're up next, please.
Hello, I'm Heather Lusk. I reside at 285 West Hawthorne Street in Zionsville. The vote tonight will be remembered for many years to come. What will be the legacy of this council's vote? The question we ask is, what if those voting for Sycamore Flats are wrong? What if this is the wrong team, the wrong time, and the wrong place? What if Sycamore Flats destroys Zionsville's special ambiance? That can't be recovered once it's gone. What happens if to our quality of life? That can't be valued. That can't be bought, but clearly it might be sold. What if we become viewed as a second-rate town with no unique identity anymore? What if the traffic plan doesn't go through? Where's the funding for that project? What if the town can't acquire the land to implement the traffic plan without an extended battle? People in Zionsville are already angry. What if every household in Sycamore Flats has 2 cars? What if they only shop on the internet? What if village housing prices go down? How far will that ripple? PUDs are required to conserve property values. What if housing prices go down beyond the village? What if massive monolithic apartment buildings are the shopping malls of the next decade? What if moving fill dirt causes environmental issues downstream? What if Lions Park floods 3 times a year or 4? What if adjoining properties flood when over 4 acres next door to them are covered in impermeable roof and concrete, 93% of the property? What if the rental market goes soft? What if there's a recession in the next 2 years? New apartments are going in on Michigan Road. What if Sycamore Flats has to lower the rents to compete? What will this building look like in 10 years or in 25 years? Who wants to live in an old apartment building? What if the bitterness and anger over this project lasts for years? Thousands of residents, more than 3,500, oppose Sycamore Flats. What if the town loses all trust in their officials and government? What if this opens the floodgates to massive, dense developments? How will Zionsville say no to the next giant project? What will be our new motto? Zionsville for all the big apartment buildings? What if our children and future residents 25 years from now are still saying, what were they thinking when they approved this? But on the other hand, what if there's a way to include Zionsville residents and bring us together? What if there are other designs that fit the village and that the town can support? What if we could have done something spectacular here that would have added to our town's uniqueness? Once again, the question we ask is, what if those voting for Sycamore Flats are wrong? What if this is the wrong team, the wrong time, and the wrong place? Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate it. Marcia Angstead, our last demonstrator speaking in opposition.
Thank you. Marcia Angstead, 345 West Hawthorne Street. And if it's all right, I would like to cede my time to Sherry Jenkins.
Sure, it's okay.
Great, Sherry. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sherry Jenkins, and I live at 215 Sherwood Court. I love our village. I'm a Zionsville High School graduate and an owner of 2 restaurants in the village. I am both financially and emotionally invested in the downtown Zionsville. Although I'm not at all opposed to growth and development, this project of Sycamore Flats is not what this village needs. I do want to set the record straight. On May 6th, at this meeting, the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors president spoke at the meeting and said, and I quote, "We would like to state our support for the project, and our members believe this project is crucial for economic vitality." That is simply not true. As a chamber member and a business owner in town, I was never asked my opinion on this project. As a business owner, I can tell you that this apartment complex is not crucial for the economic vitality of our village. Aside from all the Zionsville locals who frequent downtown village, I have customers from all over the area. There are wonderful restaurants statewide that they could go to and visit. However, they come to Zionsville. They tell me they will make the hour drive because they love to come early and shop in our village because there's no other place like it in central Indiana. I ask you to vote no and not ruin the downtown for our locals, our residents, and all the guests who come and enjoy Zionsville and spend money in Zionsville. I did spend some time on the town council website trying to get to know all of you a little bit better. I found a wonderful quote that one of you said that I feel is worth sharing. You had stated that responsible residential growth and more aggressive business growth. That was your goal. I think many residents here in Zionsville would agree that is exactly what we want from our town council. Yet this project is exactly the opposite. There's 5,000 square feet of retail space, which is very small space in a concrete jungle called the Sycamore Flats. Downtown Zionsville is a wonderful place to own a business. I am very, very proud to be part of it. By adding Sycamore Flats to downtown, it's like putting an elephant in a hamster cage. It does not fit. Please vote no. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Appreciate it. All right. No more applause, please. I'd like to get through this. Dave, Mr. Dave France, please.
David France, 7431 Fox Hollow Court. I feel it's important that I convey my thoughts as president of the Plan Commission. The Village Business District rezoning in 2017 was never intended to be the solution. It was done for 2 reasons. It was a defensive move. If somebody came forward with a light industrial development that adhered to all the ordinances, there would be no option but to approve. The rezone to VBD made it clear to the aesthetic design we would require. Despite what demonstrators think, the Plan Commission minutes reflect the belief that the only way this property would be developed is through a PUD ordinance. The demonstrators would like you to think that the Plan Commission is a rubber stamp for development. Our actions prove otherwise. In the past several years, high-profile projects were forwarded to the Town Council with unfavorable recommendations. Wolf Run and Cardon developments, for example. In the past 3 years, the specific property has been before us 3 times for PUD ordinances. One was forwarded as unfavorable, one that was gaining no support from the Plan Commission was withdrawn, and now we have this one. Why do I support this PUD ordinance? Sycamore Flats has a well-known developer who has completed multiple high-profile developments like this one will be. From what I can see, they have all provided benefit and vibrancy to the communities where they've been placed. A rejection of this project will send a clear message to developers that Zionsville is not open to development. J.C. Hart has spent a significant amount of money on this project and has been open and willing to meet with anybody. If this is rejected, why would another developer expect a different result on not only this property, but other developable properties within Zionsville? Further, I think it is problematic that Zionsville sends a message from multiple levels of its government that we support projects such as this, but once the opposition mobilizes, that support goes silent or vanishes. I feel the Zionsville Plan Commission is tough but ultimately fair. In most jurisdictions, the Plan Commission is effectively the final hurdle for matters such as these. And from what I understand, it is uncommon for town councils overrule Plan Commission recommendations. One must ask, why is that uncommon? The answer is simple. The Plan Commission is an independent, appointed board beholden to no one that is tasked with dealing with these matters. If the Plan Commission was not doing its job and was, as alleged by the remonstrators, a rubber stamp for development, I could understand the town council taking the unusual action of rejecting our recommendations, but that is not the case here. The Plan Commission has fulfilled its obligation. As much as the remonstrators talk about saving the village, despite the effort of many people, the village is not moving forward. It is standing still, and as such falls further behind the other locations have to offer. This development's impact on the village is critical to its long-term viability. Most of the business owners who depend upon foot traffic are all in support of this. This is not about their greed.
No. Let him speak, please.
This is not about their greed. This is about the survival of their businesses and its impact on the entire population of Zionsville, not a subset of the most vocal. I respectfully ask that you affirm the Plan Commission's recommendations.
Thank you, Dave. Larry Jones, we've got our last speaker in favor here. And I'll ask everyone to let him please speak.
Larry Jones, 4513 Austin Oaks Court. As a member of the Plan Commission and the BZA, I support everything Dave France just said. He kind of cut right down to the core of this being more or less the Plan Commission operates on its own. We try to fully vet, look through, make sure that we are providing the best projects we can to the town of Zionsville. The group we have before us has probably over 100 years of collective experience. They've probably participated in over $1 billion worth of development. And personally, I would hate to guess how much money they've actually invested in getting this project to this point. One of my favorite statements I always enjoy thinking about is the line that says, knowledge is what you gain from your own mistakes, and wisdom is what you gain from the mistakes of others. And the best source of ever coming up with a little bit of wisdom is to study history. And the history of Zionsville is it was formed on a very simple real estate deal. William Zion, who never actually owned any land in here, was a businessman out of Lebanon who had the seat on the board of a railroad. Elijah Christ? There we go, thank you. Married into 40 acres and a mule, and I don't think he had much interest in the mule. So the two of those got together, created a deal where they drove a stake and created the first lot that created Zionsville. And most likely afterwards, they went on down the road and divided up the profits from that deal. What's even more interesting is there's a little pamphlet written May 1877, talks about early history of Zionsville, and it goes back and kind of describes what was going on back then. And it also kind of describes that the original town in this area was Eagle Village, which is located a little bit east of here. I always wonder if William Zion actually went to Eagle Village and offered them the same deal. I'll bring a railroad through you. And they said, oh no, we've got this Michigan road out here, this muddy trail, it does us just fine. Later, Eagle Village went away, and the businesses of Eagle Village moved to Zionsville. The point I'm trying to make is you would think for a town with as much emphasis on our education and knowledge and wisdom, we'd start to learn from some of the decisions we've made in the past. We complain about, the referendum, but we failed to participate in what created Whitestown and Anson and all that. We complain about traffic, but 8 years ago, we turned down the Cooper Road Exchange, and even if we start that now, it's still 8 years away before it would ever solve our traffic problems. I'd love to go on about the whole Little League thing, but basically what I found out is that we as a town chased off an international family-friendly group that it belies anything I can even fathom of why we would do such a thing. And once again, here we have a project that will bring 180 more residences to the town, and that's what towns live and thrive and grow on, is people, traffic, that density, as well as the countless other physical benefits to the surrounding 20 acres. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. That concludes our request to speak. I appreciate everyone that has also submitted a request to speak. However, we can't get to everyone here today. Moving on to old business, we've got a consideration of an ordinance zone map change to rezone approximately 4.329 acres from the VBD Village Business District to the PUD Planned Unit Development Zoning Classification. This is a continuation from the May 6, 2019 Zionsville Town Council meeting. This is ordinance number 2019-11. Councilors, there is no intention to have any additional presentations today. This is really questions. The development team is here if you have further questions since our last meeting, or certainly discussion amongst ourselves. So I'll open it up to anyone that may have questions or comments based on the last month.
I have some questions I'd like to ask the development team.
Great.
And I don't know who.
Yeah, whoever wants to represent. Mr. Price, you want to represent the development team, please?
The First question, and a lot of this is based on the communications that have been provided by the remonstrators. Relative to the actual tax generation for the community, there has been some information out there provided that said we're giving somebody $10 million. It's going to cost, the town was essentially providing money to the developer. Is that accurate?
It's not accurate.
Okay, and so, depending on the structure, I mean, do we expect to get positive tax dollar inflow with this project from day one? And I would include low income taxes, park impact fees, road impact fees,
Yeah.
real estate taxes, and school and taxes going to the school system.
Yes, absolutely. So in year one, the total taxes and other revenue that will be payable to the school is just under $1 million, $927,000. That combines impact fees, sewer utility related fees, local option income tax payments, as well as property tax payments. And those payments and that stream of revenue are available to pay for public infrastructure necessary to keep our village the way we like it. So when Ms. Jenkins talks about not wanting development, she's simultaneously concerned about having adequate parking in the village. This type of project would produce the revenue to pay for that
Hey,
parking.
no, we're not talking when he's presenting, okay? Or you'll have to leave. I'm serious on this one. I'm sorry, Mr. Price, please continue.
Thank you, President Garrett. That type of revenue is what would make that type of additional infrastructure in the village possible. It's precisely this type of investment which will fund the necessary improvements for our village and keep it vibrant, keep it relevant, and allow businesses like Ms. Jenkins that is prosperous today to continue to prosper, as well as other businesses that are not enjoying as much prosperity as hers is. It allows them to have the infrastructure to help facilitate business where they reside. And so that's why this decision is so important, because we are deciding, I think, a great deal about the future of our village. I'm concerned about the future of our village and whether we become a Nashville, Indiana. I don't want to see the village that I grew up in, frankly, living here in Zionsville all my life, where it didn't have this vibrancy that we enjoy today. And I think if you like what you're seeing today, then you promote more investment and you allow that investment to help make this place even more vibrant and more competitive in a world that is constantly evolving all around us.
I got several communications. I got a couple, I'm sorry. I got several communications about parking. Many people wrote me letters worried about all the tenants are going to be parking on the street.
Yeah.
And could you, explain what that parking situation is, both what is available to the tenants and what is being made available to the community?
Yes, absolutely. So J.C. Hart is a very experienced multifamily developer in Indiana and outside of Indiana. And so what we've done is employ a parking ratio that's consistent with what they've done for other buildings, which is to provide 1.5 parking spaces per unit at an estimated 93% occupancy. And so that, when you put all that together, what you arrive at is total parking of 256 spaces. And our garage, the parking structure, has 255 spaces. And so the parking for the apartment residents is in the garage, plain and simple. One of the most important elements of this proposal as we were working through this initiative with the town and arriving at a package that would be acceptable to the Plan Commission and acceptable to the Chamber of Commerce and get the ear and interest of the business community was to also provide the 90 publicly available surface parking spots. And so for every space that you want to create that's publicly available, you need to be able to have parking in a garage. That's the trade-off. And so we have the parking for our residents, and we also provide the publicly available parking. We've also made an additional commitment because of a unique feature of the way these parking structures work based on J.C. Hart's prior experience in other developments, and that is we call it a reverse commuter effect, which is that we have this parking structure asset located the very south end of the village. And during the day, we anticipate that 60 to 70% of our residents will leave each day to go to work. And what that does is it creates spaces within the garage that are otherwise empty during the day. And so what we're proposing to do is to,
Folks, please continue, Mr. Price.
thank you, President Garrett. What we're proposing to do is to reserve and commit to no fewer than 40 spaces in the garage being available for merchant employee parking during weekdays and during business hours as a way of using that asset for the public good. And being very familiar with the parking situation in the village, one of the things that J.C. Hart brings to the table is not only the physical infrastructure, but also the management capability, because a lot of the issue we have in the village relative to parking is not that we don't have parking spaces, but we don't have active management of those spaces so that they can be available to the people that need to use them to park. It's not an uncommon experience to be downtown and not be able to find a parking space readily, but nevertheless, there are parking spaces that would otherwise be available. They're just on private property. They're not actively managed. They're not available. This proposal would help address that situation, and we're committing to that.
Oh, I wanted to piggyback on your TIF question, but I just want some clarification that with TIF dollars, you do have the ability to use TIF dollars to areas that abut the TIF, correct? To create, potentially, I'm not saying that we are going to allocate those dollars, but you do to infrastructure that's leading up to some roadway improvements that are adjacent to and not just specifically in the TIF.
That's correct. That's correct.
That's
And
something that people are saying that can only be spent within that TIF, but it can actually benefit other areas of the town adjacent.
Yes, it can. And that's an important question because we went through a process of validation about whether this project would generate the increment necessary to do exactly that. Because one of the challenges we face downtown, and it emerged from really this project, is that the traffic study showed that even 5,000 square feet of retail, so only 5,000 square feet of retail, causes the intersection at First and Sycamore to go from a D level of service to an F. And so to kind of put that in practical terms, that's basically Sherry's Restaurant would cause, that operation alone would cause the intersection from a D to an F. And the difficulty that presents for the town is that an investment that is fairly small like that does not have the scale of Sycamore Flats, creates the traffic issue, but doesn't create the revenue to fix the issue. And so one of the things that the exercises we went through with the town administration was to arrive at a project, again, acceptable to the Plan Commission from a use standpoint, acceptable to the Chamber of Commerce, but also of a sufficient scale to provide the revenue stream to fix longstanding infrastructure problems in the community. In fact, it's the whole reason why the TIF district exists today, is in recognition of those deferred items of infrastructure. So it's an excellent point. This would generate funds to help make road improvements that are adjacent to this project.
Mr. Price, I've heard a lot of people's concerns in regards to the environmental impact on the Eagle Creek watershed. Could you address what the DNR and the studies that you have found, and have these issues come up, and have they been addressed? And if so, how?
Yes. The threshold question for this property, I mean, the very beginning inquiry, is the determination that this site could be filled. The majority of the sites in the floodplain. And so we went through an analysis to determine whether you could fill this site with the soil, transfer the topsoil from our property and move it down to Canterbury Stables, and in the process stabilize the creek bank along Eagle Creek and turn what was otherwise undevelopable property into a developable asset for the community. And so when the administration and J.C. Hart are taken to task for meeting since August of 2017, but not reaching out to the VRA until later,
much of that time was spent going through the engineering validation that, yes, this could be done responsibly and could be done consistent with the town of Zionsville's drainage ordinances and could be done in such a way that actually improves existing conditions with regard to drainage and environmental conditions on the property. And so that was not an easy process. It involved multiple experts, both employed by the town of Zionsville and employed by J.C. Hart, a great deal of conferring on that. But they reached a really important conclusion, which is that this property can be responsibly developed using fill material. And in the process, add significant benefits to the town of Zionsville. One of the real shames should this project be denied, and these things will only come out later on, I suppose, they'll trickle out. But one of the real shames will be that right now, Zionsville has an existing trail easement that's falling into Eagle Creek. And so when we talk about wanting to create a community that's connected and have the amenities that make this town a place where people want to come and shop and eat at restaurants, when we say that, part of that is having the infrastructure available for our residents so they can get places on foot and by bike. And this project has a way of being able to stabilize the creek bank, create the stream of revenue to pay for that, and help add to our overall amenity package for our community. It's the essence of what we're trying to accomplish through this project.
And in your studies, was the lower density considered?
Yes. We went through an analysis with internally and communicated with representatives of the town as well to arrive at a density that could pay for the public infrastructure necessary for this site to be developable and provide aspects of the proposal that we think are essential in order to be accepted by renters in the Zionsville community. And what I mean by that is we felt like the dwelling units offered had to be of a quality, had to have the amenity package, and had to have the on-site management necessary to make them a top-tier rental option. That what we're missing in the village is, you know, in over 50 years, we've not built a new apartment in the village itself. And we felt like that if we were going to provide that option, it needed to be a top-tier option. In order to pay for those things and afford those things, it needed to have that minimum density. And what we did not do, and John Hart, who's in the front here, expressed to me from the very beginning, is we did not play games with suggesting a density up here in the first meeting and then coming down 20 units in the next meeting and then arriving at 184 units. We didn't do that. We came in with our best foot forward, and that's what 184 units is. That's what it represents, and that's how we got to that number.
So if I understand correctly, anything less than that will not provide the revenue nor the ability for these things to pay for themselves as well as to offset income to the town.
Yes, that's right.
Matt, you mentioned year one, it's $950K to the town through fees and taxes. Doesn't pay taxes till year 4. Can you sort of explain what you meant by year 1? Is your year 1 our year 4?
Yeah, it's year 1 means the stabilized year when you're fully assessed and paying taxes.
So that's year 4.
You're under control.
Hey, please, this is not helpful.
Really not. It's for every project in Zionsville, and anywhere else, when you measure the taxable income off of a project, it's when the project's actually been built and stabilized.
And then
That's when they actually assign the assessed value.
Yeah, so for clarification, it's not just an exception for your project, that's how it is done across the
That's
board. Thank you.
But also in that same, when you talk about the impact fees and the other dollars, those come in as permits are filed, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So is that I guess that was my question. Is that a net to year 1 incentive? Year 1 is opening, but the fees are being paid kind of year -2 during the.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I mean,
it's a roll up of everything to year 1 to
Yeah.
go live,
So,
right?
so there may be a distinction between year one when you pay the fees and year one when you're fully assessed. But the green light go project revenue is the 927 is what I said. Yeah.
And that's including the one-time fees, correct?
That's correct.
Because I've got the spreadsheet you sent me, and it's sort of...
I'll tell you, the reason I'm saying that way is I got some commentary, constructive criticism after the last meeting where I spoke only in terms of the tax revenue during that meeting. And so what I wanted to make sure of is that everyone here knew that there are substantial impact fees being paid as well. So there's, I've got the exact numbers, but the breakout is, it includes $225,000 for park impact fees, $186 for road impact fees, and then $305 for sewer and water. So that's where I'm lumping that in with our taxes as well.
Those are one-time fees, or those are reoccurring every year?
Those are one-time fees.
I know that Mr. Hart this is a developer-backed bond, and I understand what that means. What happens if something changes in his business and in 4 years he has to sell the property, flip the property? What happens to does he still own the bond, or does the bond flip with the buyer?
Typically what you see, it's a very good question. Typically what you see is a provision that says that we would anticipate, for example, should this go forward, that the town would require a guarantee of the bond payments from a creditworthy entity under J.C. Hart control. So there's usually some financial underwriting that you go through to make sure that the guarantor has the resources to guarantee the increment. And so what is usually part and parcel with that is that a provision that if the project's ever transferred, that the redevelopment commission or the council, however the parties want to structure it, requires their consent before it could be transferred. So it could not be transferred to somebody who is not, does not have the financial wherewithal to honor the obligation.
So the bond is not guaranteed by the town?
Not guaranteed by the town, no. This project, from that standpoint, is when we say developer backed, what we're meaning, and I want to be very clear about this because these terms are used interchangeably and they're not necessarily always interchangeable terms. We're talking about developer backed, meaning developer purchased. So he's going to provide the funds to buy the bond out of his own pocket or from borrowed monies. And he's also going to back the bond in the sense that he is going to repay it. You can also have instances where a bond is developer backed, but not purchased by them. It could just be guaranteed, but owned by somebody else. That's not what we're proposing here.
And I know we're wading into financing instead of the rezoning, what this really is, right? In the situation where that happens, when is the bond issued? I mean, is that day one? Is the interest just accrued until the stabilization happens and
Correct.
the dollars are cash flowing off it to then service the bond effectively?
That's correct.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions.
Please, Councilor Plunkett.
I think maybe as a point of clarification, through the emails and everything that I've received from the start, all of which, unless you emailed me after Denise Pierce, were returned. So you should have all gotten some kind of response. When I thought this was about just the issues associated with the concerns that I started getting, things like parking, TIF, bonding, different entrances, the size, et cetera, I took the concerns and I went to the developers. And Matt, I would like for you just to clarify a couple of things on this parking deal.
Yes, sir.
The daytime parking spots are going to be available in the garage at 40 spots in the garage and 25 earmarked spots on the surface lots as well, correct?
Yes, sir. What we've committed to is to provide the 40 spots in the garage for weekday daytime parking for our idea is merchant employees, and then to also reserve 25 of the 90 surface spots on the southern end of the property for that same purpose. and all of those parking spots would be managed by J.C. Hart, would be actively managed.
And are all the 93 parking spots available to anyone during the daytime?
The 90?
The 93 outdoor spots, are those?
It's 90.
90, okay,
90, yes, sir. They are, with the one caveat that Councilor Plunkett just mentioned, which is that our kind of our augmented commitment is to try to reserve 25 on the southern edge for merchant employee parking, just because we think that's a way of maximizing the utility of those spots for the public good.
Thank you.
One kind of going along a little bit more, I know that one of the emails I received since the last meeting made a reference to the TIF being on the vote for this particular meeting. I understand that that's actually the next step in the process. However, can you just talk a little bit about the TIF as it was originally presented and any kind of changes you may be willing to make in good faith?
Yes, sir. We had, if I could give a little background to that
Sure.
answer, we had, as I say, entered into discussions with the town to go through what I'm calling a validation process. I don't want to leave you with the impression that anybody else used that word. That's just the word that I associated with it. And what it was kind of a rigorous examination of the numbers we were providing for what revenue would this project actually produce. What I think the town did not want to have was a situation where a developer comes in and says, I have a $40 million project, and lo and behold, it turns out to be assessed at $10 million, and it doesn't deliver the benefits that have been promised to the community. And so we went through an exercise. I promised Mark I wouldn't. Actually, he asked me not to ask him any questions about this case today because he's out here on a different matter. God bless him. But we went through a rigorous examination with Crow. Horwath, the community's fiscal advisors, like we would in any other community. I've been through very similar examinations. This one was much more grueling than others because they really drilled down to say to John, provide us evidence of your other projects, of what your project costs were, what the ultimate AV was, and show us that what you're saying is true. And that we did that and compared multiple properties. And so we arrived at basically a stream of revenue that the parties believed would be produced from this property. And we were given an initial kind of a determination of the increment to be generated from Crow. And then we went back to them and had a subsequent discussion. We got a second one. And so we took that reference to the second one and we put that in the PUD ordinance for a very specific reason. And it's a scar I wear in Zionsville that I'll tell you why I did it, which was that years ago, we did a project in Zionsville. We got approval. We came back in several months later and asked for incentives, believing it was a separate process. And a different council at that time took great exception to the fact that we had not, they felt not been forthcoming in saying, you were going to ask for incentives? Well, if you were going to ask for incentives, we might have asked for this or that or something else from you. And so what we have done from that point forward is we've never come in and not said that we were going to be seeking incentives. And so that's what that provision in the PUD ordinance means. And what we've done subsequent, I'll dispense with the wind up and finish the pitch, which is that we made adjustments to our TIF proposal to show good faith to say we will reduce the initial bond proposal by just under $900,000, which reduces our total bond request to just to $4.3 million. And then we changed the split. The town had originally proposed to us an 80-20 split, which means 80% of the increment would go to the developer, 20% would be available to the town for its purposes.
Mr. Price?
Yeah.
When you say the town proposed it, who?
Well, Fair point. It was the Crow answer back in the proposal from Crow. So, yeah. What I mean by that is that we understood at the time that a significant portion of the incremental revenue was going to go to the town because it was going to pay for the infrastructure adjacent to the TIF and others, presumably, things that may happen in the future. And so what we have gone back to the council with is a different split where we've adjusted it to a 72% to the developer, 28% for the town. And part of the idea behind that was that one of the things that came up during the diligence process on this matter was concerns about the impact of the project on the school. And we wanted to be able to allow for a pass-through of increment to the school if the town chose to do that, while also preserving increment for the town to bond and use it for their other public purposes. And so that's the adjustments we've made since the initial proposal.
So to be clear, the bond ask has been dropped.
The bond ask.
Significantly. The TIF, original structure of the TIF also has been at least initially adjusted. Can you talk a little bit about the school specifically? Obviously, I know there's a lot of numbers being thrown around about the impact of the school corporations or the school corporation. Can you talk a little bit about what the developer is willing to do and explain a little bit more about how that TIF pass-through can be used?
Yes. So as I mentioned, that for every project in Zionsville that involves a residential component, you're required to submit basically the nuts and bolts of your project, and the controller for the school corporation is a gentleman named Mike Shaver, who's a very experienced man and a very good CFO. He runs through an analysis and they identify what the impact of your proposal is on the school. And we were, I believe, I know this actually, we were the very first project to come through that system using the new demographic study that the school had commissioned a year ago or so. And so when you sometimes read, I've read many comments in the public that the developer says this is going to generate 18 kids. That's not accurate. That's the school's estimate of kids. And it's based on their average for apartments across the Zionsville community, which include 3-bedroom apartment units. And there's almost a direct one-to-one correlation between adding kids to the school and the availability of 3-bedroom apartments. We have no 3-bedroom apartments as part of this proposal. But assuming a worst-case scenario, what the school concluded is that they would anticipate an annual shortfall for all costs of $49,955. And I have said this, I think, in other venues, and I'll say it again. When we met with Dr. Robeson, who is a former member of the Westfield Redevelopment Commission, done work in front of Dr. Robeson in his capacity there, his immediate reaction to me was to say, it's such a small number that you could simply allow for that amount of revenue to pass through if the town chose to do that. And what he meant by that was, he wasn't giving short shrift to the $50,000. What he was saying is that in the context of their nearly $90 million annual budget, that was not going to be a showstopper for the school at all. And the funding is available, should the town want to use it that way, to pass through to the schools. But that's something that's up to the town. They have the statutory right to do that, and they choose to do that. We've committed to enter into a development agreement that includes a term that would give the town that option. That's been our commitment.
Good?
Yep.
Other questions for Mr. Price, developers? Any other, or statements?
I have a statement to make.
Please.
Yeah, if I could, I actually do have questions, not for Mr. Price, though. I happened to see that Mr. Santelli is sitting in the back, and I'd like to have the privilege to call him to the microphone, please.
It's your honor, sure.
Commissioner Santelli, I happen to know that you have quite a bit of experience, and I'd like to get the Boone County perspective, if that would be acceptable.
I had knee surgery.
Oh,
I didn't fall off my horse.
I'm glad you made it to this meeting then.
Well, from a county perspective, I'm currently working on Bridge 192.
I'm sorry, can you state your name?
Oh,
and-
yes,
Sorry,
Tom
Mr.
Santelli.
President, I jumped the gun on that one.
No, no worries.
1195 Woodside Court, Commissioner, District 1.
And my question specifically would be, have you had the opportunity to review the proposal? And if such, could you give us, from the Boone County perspective, what your perspective on the impact on Boone County would be, as Zionsville being one of the largest cities in Boone County?
Sure. And again, we're working on Bridge 192, which is 300, extension of 146, which is coming over from 69, and it's going to join 65 through Zionsville. So the development is coming in all around us. We are not going to be able to hold up our hands and say, stop. If you drive down 146 and go through Carmel, you can pick developments that are put together by developers from Colorado, from California, from all different areas. And in Zionsville, and this is based on my experience, I know that people have said, well, what if we make the wrong decision? So I've been here for 20 years, and I've lived in communities that have made similar decisions. Naperville, St. Charles, Woodinville, Washington, Issaquah, and just my own hometown has added a development strategy around going forward. And it almost seems to me that for some reason, we don't want to bring in a population such as my father-in-law, who was a colonel in the Air Force, and he didn't buy houses, he didn't buy condominiums, he lived in luxury apartments. And
Hey,
it kind of-
Mr. Santelli,
Yes, sir.
we are kind of meandering here a little bit.
Okay.
Ms. Suarez, do you have specific
Yeah, I
questions
asked
here?
a specific
Yes.
question.
That doesn't seem like a specific answer. Could you ask the question again and maybe just have a specific answer for her, please?
Yeah, I'm specifically asking what the impact on the county, from your perspective on the county board, would be.
I think it would be a positive addition to Boone County.
Any other questions?
Because
Councilor Hopper?
they will be the approximate income. We will be gleaning income tax from those residents who are there. That will be going directly to the county, and the county will be benefiting as well as Zionsville.
We're well
So is that-
behind in road funding. We're well behind in our county budget in terms of what we'd like to do. The schools are also supported by the sales tax. So we have a shortage of housing for developers coming in with manufacturing, for distribution centers, for all the things that we'd like to bring in. So, there is a shortfall. You can talk with Molly Whitehead at the EDC. These are all things that are needed. We need additional housing. We need a balance in housing. I've done a lot of research, including working with Harvard, and in terms of a balanced community is going to create higher property values than one that isn't balanced.
Please, folks, let him speak.
So, and if you look at all the other communities that are developing within the county, whether it's Lebanon or Whitestown or Advance or Thorntown, Jamestown, anybody would be dying for a project like this.
Hey. Hey. Next outburst is out of here, all right? I'm not kidding around here. I got a lot of positive feedback last time for how well we handled ourselves, because this is Zionsville. I expect the same thing here today, please. Any other questions for Mr. Santelli?
No, my questions were really based on that. I think that there has been a vacuum in the conversations that we've had so far as to how this impacts not just our community, but surrounding communities and the county as a whole. And I think it's important to look at the bigger picture, not just the immediate picture in front of us. So I thought that perspective would be an important part of our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Santelli.
Mr. Santelli.
Councilor Spies, you had something you wanted to say?
Statement to make. I've been publicly accused by Mr. Price of voting against this proposal because of quote-unquote personal financial concerns. He claims that I was afraid that I would have patients leave my practice, so I voted for this project. Mr. Price has asked that I recuse myself from this vote. His accusations are untrue, and I find this personal attack reprehensible. I would like to go on record that I've not had the first person tell me that they would leave my practice if I didn't vote their way. I've had patients voice their opinions to me both in favor and against this project. It has in fact occurred to me that either a yes or no vote could hurt my business. If I recuse myself, I might also lose patients who elected me to show up and do my job. I've done a large amount of research regarding this project. Here's why I don't believe that this is the right project for this property. The project is too large. They will try to make it look like Main Street, but it's much bigger than all the buildings combined on Main Street in the blocks. I'm not in favor of it being a PUD. I think the current zoning is the right one for the area. The developers state that the town will gain 90+ parking spaces, but they're going to assign 25 of them to people that want to pay for rent. And that they will police their tenants from parking there. I find it hard to believe that people won't park in front of their own apartments if it's more convenient for them. I do believe that the extension of First Street would help traffic. I also believe that adding a minimum of 184 travelers will worsen the traffic. I've received many emails and had many conversations with Zionsville residents who oppose this project. If approved, I do not believe that Sycamore Flats will ruin our town, as many have said. And I've said that to many people. The resounding voice against it reflects in my vote. We are not voting tonight on the fact that Mr. Price's client will be asking for the TIF to be extended and whether the developer would get a refund for the TIF money to help pay for this project. They brought it to the table, so I feel that it should be addressed. This basically amounts to a large tax abatement, and I've been against many of those. As you can see, Mr. Price, I have many reasons to think that this isn't the right project for Zionsville. As an aside, with all the emails that we've received, I've recently defended you to more than one person who described you as a corrupt, money-hungry attorney. On the very day of the vote, you suggest that I recuse myself from this vote and seek independent legal counsel as though I should worry about being sued. With this low-level personal attack, I'll have to rethink the amount of respect you deserve. Thank you.
No, Mr. David, please. No. Come on. Enough.
Can we hear him respond as a sitting member of the council? Yeah, could you?
Please.
Okay, maybe just to diffuse what he said.
Thank you, Heather.
Sorry, I have to move and do different things all at one time. So I just wanted to say I had the opportunity to talk both with Mr. Price as well as with Councilor Spies over the weekend. And I understand Mr. Price had heard allegations or rumors that there had been threats to Councilor Spies' dental practice. And I appreciate you bringing those forward. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk. And I know Councilor Spies, you were upset by those, and you're a man of great integrity, and Mr. Price, I believe you are as well, having worked with you for years. But I've had the opportunity to talk with Councilor Spies, and we've gone through the statutes as legal counsel, and I believe that there is no reason why you do need to recuse yourself, and so I appreciate you making a statement. I know that was important to you. I don't think we need to go back and sort of he said, she said, but I know each of our council members have taken a great deal of time and consideration talking with members of the public as well as talking with representatives from the developer. And so I appreciate, our council members being able to vote their conscience, and I think each individual here is able to do that tonight in good standing and good conscience. So with that, but I know, Mr. Price, you and I talked about it today, and you did work to clarify that, so I appreciate that as well.
Thank you, Heather. Other comments before we bring up a vote?
Yeah, I'd like to be able to make a comment.
Yeah, please don't.
Glasses out, I'm getting old. This has been a really interesting process for me. I mean, 8 years ago I ran for office, and it's on my website today, and I told anybody that would listen, that cared to listen or wanted to vote for me, that I was pro-development. At the time, I was for Walmart. I know a lot of people were against that. I went to some village meetings and heard some pretty awful things as people talked about Walmart and the people that might shop there, which is very disappointing. By the way, that's happened this time as well. Demographics, people are worried about demographics, and I'm disappointed. And you can say no, and I've got the mail.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating to me because I came to this community, and long before I got involved in politics, I got asked by a neighbor to join the Lions Club. I went out there, I worked hard, I sweated, I hurt my back and my arms, I raised lots of money. Ralph Stacy's in the audience here. He's probably been a Lion longer than almost anybody, and he and I don't agree on much, but I'd like to think he agreed. I worked really hard for that club, for this community, for all of you to enjoy that park and all the events that we do there. I've tried to make myself a contributor to this community. And the reason I'm saying this, and somebody's waving their hands out there, is because I've gotten multiple emails and lots of social media about me making money off of Matt Price somehow, taking a payoff, doing something illicit, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. I've never worked with Matt personally or his law firm. I have no financial gain to get from this. Much like I wanted 8 years ago, I wanted it for the community. And while this community there are 3,500 people signed a petition, there are 25,000 people who live here. And my job was theoretically to represent, at least try to make decisions I thought would be positive for all 25,000 people. And that's what I've tried to do. I can't say that I've been perfect, but at least I've tried. With regard to this particular project, I thought the positive tax impact it was going to have on the community, it's a 2% taxable property. I thought the positive economic impact it would have on the downtown merchants, which I think is critical for our long-term survival. I've lived in towns that didn't support the downtown merchants and didn't do the right development activities, and they're not very good towns today. I think it would be terrific for our downtown. My understanding on what I've heard and the facts that have been shared again today, it's not a negative impact on the schools. It's 18 students out of 6,000, whatever today's population is, and it's going to be another 1,000 more in 5 years, according to all the studies that have been shared with us by the school board that they believe to be 100% accurate. The additional parking, it's there. I don't believe we're renting out the 25 additional spaces. I think they were just being held in addition to support the merchants and their parking people. The environmental issues, I know they've worked with the DNR. I know they've worked with our town as well to make sure that wasn't an issue. I've seen the erosion on the creeks. Anything that we could do to help support that would be terrific. Those are the reasons I would vote for this project. I did before. And like I said, the personal attacks and the negative outreach on somebody who, quite frankly, I've donated a lot and done a lot for this community as individuals. And I know many of you out here. I know Ralph. I don't know everybody out here. But I'm just really disappointed. And as I've told anyone that would actually listen, saying no is okay. I don't like it. Sharing inaccurate information, I don't think makes this process a beneficial one to the whole community. And I've not shared any inaccurate information with anyone here, nor have I in the last 7.5 years that I've served on this council. I've not always agreed with everyone here, but I've always treated everyone with respect. I've never shouted anyone down in the audience. I've never insulted anybody that came up here and made a statement that I don't agree with. And today I'm a little disappointed everybody here is booing people who are just trying to do a job, trying to get information out. You may not agree with the information, and that's absolutely your right. I'm not telling you have to. But I think as a community, and again, the other thing I heard, what I felt made this a great community was the people that lived here, the fact that they would help one another, the fact that they would volunteer, that guys like Ralph Stacy, who's volunteered thousands of hours to help this community. And I've tried to, I always felt like I fell behind when I was, on a club with Ralph. So that's what makes a great community. It's not a red brick street. It's not a small little quaint house. It's good people helping one another and trying to be a positive influence on one another. And I just hope that we can get back to that sort of general consensus. Thank you.
No, hey, this is not a dialogue.
Actually, I would like to request that it be removed.
Yeah, Chief, can we, we're not having this, okay? I've warned 2 times now. I'm sorry, ma'am, you can watch upstairs if you can't control yourself. Councilor Schuler gave his talk, and that's fine. Anybody else?
I have a statement.
Yep, Councilor Suarez.
So very similar to Councilor Schuler, I've served this community for 8 years as a council member. I've served as president of the council. I've served as president of the safety board and the police commission several times. Countless hours in service to our town, hours away from my family, hours away from my friends, for no other reason than the passionate commitment that I have for our community. We have seen numerous projects that have come through here, many of which we approved for the betterment of our town and the diversification of our tax base. Many we did not approve, a lot of which were brought by Mr. Price. When chagrin to him, they were not good projects and we turned them down. A lot of these projects, however, turned out to be very good for the town. My record speaks for itself. Scurrilous, scandalous accusations that were concocted with the sole purpose of destruction against me and my family are not appreciated and are just blatant lies. I'm ashamed and shocked at the level of personal attacks that this deliberation has brought upon me, upon my children, who have been pulled aside in the supermarket and told that their mommy is sold like a piece of cattle, so thanks for that. I was going to bring my kids here today. I just didn't think it was appropriate based on the behavior of our town. Our members, one of our members has lost his father, and people went to his wake to talk about this process. So I just want to come to terms with this. This defies common courtesy. This is just not what I ran as a person to represent. The town of Zionsville is all of us as a community, and our community is not behaving very well. So all of us may disagree, and I applaud disagreement. This is the most interaction we have had in a project in a while, and thank you for that. We love this room filled. I mean, truly, this is what we get into democracy for. We all live here. We are your friends. We are your neighbors. We have the opportunity to grow and thrive together, not by hate-mongering or vicious lies. The ends do not justify the means. The Scorched Earth campaign has left a serious mark on all of us who question why, in essence, we have volunteered 8 years of our lives in the service of this community. To all I say is argue the merits and in your point of view. I applaud the passion, I applaud the activism, but please keep it in the nice realm of discussion. How we treat each other is as important as whether this project fails or passes. You are teaching your kids that these ends to means to an end are the right things to do, and I hope that is not the community we're building here. I believe the very clear merits of this project are what prompted me to issue a positive vote. It is based on the Planning Commission's recommendation that we have a process. The process was completely followed. The Planning Commission issued a positive recommendation. Very rarely does this council revoke or reverse the Planning Commission because they are thorough professionals. They are extremely good at what they do. And we have this community because of the volunteer work of these dedicated professionals. None of us are bought and sold. We are not cattle, and I do not appreciate that. These are consummate professionals, and I trust both our planning department and our planning commission. The economics that are being put forth are needed and beneficial to all of us. We have turned down multiple projects that were not good. This one, I believe, is. None of the concerns for the schools, traffic, et cetera, were brought up in much larger projects, like the golf course community going up on Michigan or on Hampshire on 875. Where was that concern? None of this room was filled in those massive projects. I believe we can either grow or die. Our community has already seen multiple businesses fail and close on Main Street. Our beloved Brick Street is in danger, but not from apartments, from inaction. That's what the entire Chamber of Commerce, well, some, I stand corrected, and merchants are trying to do to support this project. We are trying to save Zionsville. Perhaps we're coming about it in different points of view, but I believe you are as passionate as we are. I hope you see all the benefits that the fresh infusion of capital, infrastructure, and people to our village will breathe a life to our village. I hope you and I and everybody else can continue to be neighbors and friends because we're all passionate about this. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for your passion, and hope we can move on.
Thank you, Councilor Suarez. Anybody else? I'm sure we probably already know how we're voting, so I would call for a motion unless there's any other statements. Councilor Hopper?
Well, I was going to echo the sentiments shared by the two council members that I've served with for the past 2 terms. I would like you to know that this is not a vote that is taken lightly. I've listened to the Plan Commission. I've done my due diligence. I've listened to the hearings, spoken to Plan Commission members individually. I've taken the time to speak to both those who are for and against this project. I've spoken to the developer, to my peers, and to other community leaders. And I've asked a number of questions to make sure that I thought this process through clearly. I'm voting tonight on the merits of the proposed Sycamore Flats project that is before the council. I'm applying reason and logic to this process, albeit it is very difficult when those in opposition to this project appear on many levels to be operating within the confines of misinformation and negative emotion. I would like to thank those who have reached out to me, both in favor and against. Many of the exchanges have been very well thought out and respectful, and I've read them and taken them into consideration since my last vote. If this project was directly on Main Street, as a number of people came up to me and asked, why would I want to be in favor of an apartment complex on Main Street? I said, it's not. If it was there, I wouldn't be in favor of it. If this project did not adequately address engineering concerns based upon the environmental impact on the floodplain, I would be opposed to it. If this project did not meet specific aesthetic parameters set forth by the town, I would be opposed to it. If this project would negatively impact our fire or our police, I would be against it. If this project did not have a mechanism by which the schools could be compensated for the deficit for the new students, I would be opposed to it. If the developer was not willing to work with us to offer alternatives to address the initial parking availability, I would be opposed to it. If the opposition flyer that was circulated and resulted in the initial 3,000 votes was fact-based, it would make me take pause. If this project was not brought forward by reputable members of the community, as well as a respected developer with a proven track record, I would be opposed to it. I have had a seat on this council for 7.5 years, and am very well aware of the deficiencies and a number of the intersections surrounding the general area. Approval of the Sycamore Flats project would put a project in front of them to get the work done. I've watched the development of the 106th Street corridor, Creekside Park, and the new housing that's available on South Zionsville Road. That, coupled with the improvements in business on South Main, could offer us a potential bridge to North Main. We need to work on that property, to develop it, to have a vision, and this would provide an anchor. Not by which I'm suggesting we have additional housing opportunities like this, but it will provide us the opportunity to see that growth, to bridge that gap, and to work with our vision. This project was brought forth to us with a favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission. I would personally like to thank them for their time and detailed attention that they apply to every project brought before them. I do know that they take their responsibilities seriously, and they do not leave any stone unturned as they vet the projects that are sent before the council. As such, it is rare that our council votes against the recommendations. As I've raised my family in this community for 18 years, I've had the privilege of serving on this board for 7.5. I've seen lots of changes in our community. And one of the things that I've loved about this community is the people in it, the passion that you bring. But you guys are giving a ton of power to one building. You are saying it's going to destroy Zionsville. And Zionsville is the people that are here. No, it is the people that are here. It is not one building. If we all work together, guys, this building could be an asset. It could bring new vitality to our community. And I'm voting on it and merits of the project and how it stands and how it's been brought forth to us with a favorable recommendation. I think that we need to engage in civil dialogue and to leave the disrespect behind. So I welcome conversations with each and every one of you, and have taken, even, as I said, both sides into consideration. But I will vote for this based upon the merits of the project in front of me.
Thank you, Councilor Hopper.
All right. And I do see some confused faces out there, so I want to address this a little bit as somebody that did vote no last time. However, I know a few thousand people watched the silly video I put out that was, yeah, that was fun. So I put out a video where I was kind of supportive of the project itself, and if you watch the video and watch the comments, you can kind of get an idea of what these folks to my left are saying. It's not the majority, but there have been some very vocal people out there that have taken this to a very personal and negative place for all of us. I mean, before we ever had a vote, we were all accused by somebody of being corrupt. And it's just, so I appreciate what you're saying. I completely understand what you're saying. I've been on that side of it. I think we all have. So it's not, so those that have the confused looks on your face, that's kind of what it's all about. If you have a confused look on your face, good for you. That means you probably didn't do it. But if you're out there kind of ducking your head, yeah, you might be one of the ones that called me a not so nice name. And you know, when you come up and thank me for voting no, I remember. But you know, my ask is just, you know, next time that we have something like this, merits of the property, merits of the project, you know, things that have to do with that. Don't take it in a personal way. You know, none of us are up here to make a bunch of money. If we did, we would all be in the wrong position. That's for darn sure. But that's it. I just kind of wanted to clarify for those that looked confused. It wasn't everybody, but there have been some pretty nasty things out there said about all of us. Thanks.
Good clarification.
It's ugly. This whole process has been ugly.
Yeah.
It's disappointing.
Very disappointing.
Yeah. Any other comments? Or at this point, I guess we would take a motion to move on. Anyone for or against?
So you're going to love me for this one, but I'm going to actually make a motion to continue this process. I knew you'd love me. See, I love that.
Are there any seconds to continue it?
Second.
Okay. Well, we can do a vote. Do you want to explain why we should continue this and bring all these people back?
Well, I do believe that there's a lot of community dialogue that has been fairly one-sided. I do believe there's information that I want to avail myself of that I have not been able to do. I think that this project and this size of commitment from both our side as well as the development side requires very thorough investigation, as much work as we've already done. It seems to me that we have the 90 days in order for us to do a thorough vetting process, and I am just not convinced we have fulfilled that completely. I would like to get to know a little bit more about the Planning Commission's decision as well as our town leadership that has put this forward. So those are my reasons.
I cannot disagree more, but there is a motion, there is a second. I will do a roll call vote on this motion to continue. A yes is you want to continue. Councilor Schuler? Yes. Councilor Hopper?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Suarez?
Yes.
Vice President Traylor?
No.
I am a no. Councilor Spies?
No.
No. Councilor Plunkett?
No.
Okay, that motion does not pass. I will now take any other motions on this project.
Motion to reject this project.
I have a motion to reject the project. I will second that motion. As I do this roll call vote, Heather, keep me honest here.
Yes.
If you are saying yes when I call your name, you are agreeing with Councilor Spies' motion to reject it. So
Correct.
a yes
Is a no.
is a no.
Correct. Those negative ones always make me nervous.
Yes, correct. Does everyone understand that?
Can you repeat that?
So, no problem.
I'm old. I'm not here at the end.
The motion's to deny.
The motion is to deny. If you, when I'll do a roll call vote, and I'll start in the other end this way to maybe end some drama. If you say yes to the denial, you're voting against the proposal. If you say no, you are voting for the
So
proposal.
you just vote before me, then I'll know what to vote.
We'll do it that way. We've got a motion to deny and a second. Councilor Plunkett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Spies?
Yes.
Yes. I vote yes. Councilor Traylor?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Suarez?
No.
No. Councilor Hopper?
No.
No. Councilor Schuler?
No.
Okay, motion fails to pass 4-3. It is not approved. We have other items to attend to. I'm going to take a 5-minute recess to allow those folks that do not want to continue. You are welcome to continue on this with us, but I'll let you leave if you so choose.
All right.
Is that clear, Spud?
Let's start.
I misunderstood it too,
All day
man.
long, that's awful weird.
I misunderstood it too. Okay.
I'm John King. I'm the
Oh, hey, John. Yeah, you're on my list. I actually wrote your name down. Like, I wonder if he's going to stop up. Yeah, thanks for reaching out.
My pleasure.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Got a lot of them.
Thank you.
I'm literally disappointed. I have
That's all right. Thank
Yes.
She's great. Yeah, she is. She texted me about big show.
Continue our meeting. We've got some new business to get through here for a little bit of a lighter crowd. Before we start there, Heather, do you want to explain signing on what we just voted on, please, so
Yes.
counselors know how they're signing?
Just to make things more confusing. So I'm passing down the actual recommendation from the Plan Commission. If you were a yes against, you're actually a no on this.
So a no is now a no.
No is really a no. And
Okay.
yes is really a yes. So if
Okay.
you would
So yes,
accordingly.
you're affirming the planning commission's
Correct.
recommendation.
Correct.
Exactly. So just to be
We should have 3
Clear
yeses and
cut.
4 nos when we get done with that. On to new business. We've got a consideration of an ordinance vacating a portion of Andre Drive right-of-way. This is a first reading. This is ordinance number 2019-13. Deputy Mayor Mitro, are you presenting this to us?
Thank you. I will introduce this. Andrew Wirt is representing the petitioners, who are the Snyders. They are here right in the front row, and we'll take it from there. This is brought to you by the petitioner. This is a right-of-way that has been in question for a number of years. They have opted to want to vacate the right-of-way. In talking with staff, obviously, this right-of-way is not a public street and does not connect directly to the Bennett Parkway. It is in front of and terminates at the Snyder's business. With that, I will introduce Andrew Wirt. He can walk you through that. I will tell you, this is a first read, but because it is a vacation of right-of-way, it also is a public hearing, and notice of public hearing was published in the Times Sentinel.
I was not aware of that, but I have that. Do I need to call a public hearing on this then,
You
Ed?
do, you can allow Mr. Wirt to present first and then call for a public.
I will do that.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Andy Wirt, land use professional with a law firm of Churchill and Antrim with offices at 2 North 9th Street in Noblesville. Here tonight on behalf of Mike Snyder of Snyder Property Group. Our request deals with a property I believe you're pretty familiar with, the west end of the Archview Properties apartment development, now under construction, that you approved last year, also known as the Walmart property. We are seeking a vacation of the northern portion of Andre Drive. This is a section of right-of-way that was dedicated with a one-lot plat recorded in 1993. That was actually an addition to the Andre Industrial Park. The lot is now home to Mike's company, the Snyder Group, a site development contractor. So actually, rather lengthy history on this. In the interest of time and expedition, I'll give you the 30-second executive summary and let the council ask questions.
Appreciate it.
For logistical reasons, the Snyders prefer that the entire right-of-way be vacated and revert back to their lot. Trying to negotiate with Walmart on this proved a little problematic. By that time, they had decided not to develop the site. They were just interested in really just selling it, disposing of it. So our firm filed a quiet title action with the Boone Superior Court. While we were in the midst of this legal action, the property changed hands, and we were able to reach an agreement with the new property owner. This agreement was subject to the recording of a sanitary sewer easement, which has been executed and recorded. We believe this is a sensible request. In 1993, responsible planning dictated that you allow for a possibility of road extension. Here we are in 2019. The property's pretty much, or the area is pretty much developed out. Traffic patterns have been established. This right-of-way section, by the way, has never been paved, except for the part there at the entry there into Snyder Group. As Ed mentioned, we have sent public hearing notices by certified mail to all property owners that geographically touch the right-of-way, not just east-west, but also north-south. I'm going to stop here and allow you to ask questions. Mike and I, or either one of us, will be happy to answer.
Any objections from your neighbors on the mailings?
I have not heard from anyone.
Any objections to Steve Snyder in general?
Oh, we've got one back there. Mr. Mayor.
It's just that little strip of land on the east side that runs north and south.
That is correct, yes.
And that was intended originally just to extend down like Andre Drive north to something.
Right, I think in '93, when it was recorded, the property to the north had not developed yet, so there was some question about how that was going to pan out.
So this ended up in Boone County Court. Can you explain why this has been so contentious?
I think.
You cannot hear me? Are you kidding?
No, I just figured with that up there.
Sorry.
There we go.
This is the first time I've been told I'm not loud enough, just for the record.
I can hear you. I want to make sure they can hear you or anyone upstairs.
I'm curious as to why this ended up in Superior Court and whether the contention is completely resolved.
We believe that it is. By state statute, when you vacate right-of-way, it is split between either property owner. In this case, and Mike has more history on this than I do, but the land was dedicated as part of the plat, was developed by his father, again, back in '93. And for logistical reasons, Mike's planning on building a storage building to house some of his equipment. They needed the entire right-of-way. And so I think it was more of an expeditious type of thing. We were wanting to get the ball rolling and get things finished. And that's why we filed in court. As it turns out, we really didn't need to, because when the property changed hands, the new owners were happy to oblige us.
Okay. Well, that's thank you.
Any other questions? As Deputy Mayor Mitro did point out, this is a public hearing. I have proof of publication. I will open the public hearing. If anyone wants to speak on this specific subject, please come up now. All right, I will close the public hearing. Any other comments or any motions on this?
Move approval?
Is that Councilor Hopper?
No.
Oh, that's Councilor Suarez, sorry.
The loud one.
A second from Councilor Schuler. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion to introduce ordinance numbers 2019-13 on first reading passes with a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Next, we have a consideration of an ordinance amending the 2019 salary ordinance for the town of Zionsville. This is a first reading. This is ordinance number 2019-14. Mr. Barry Cook, would you like to present? Mr. Mitro is standing up, though.
No, I'd rather Barry do it. Well, I told Barry that all of the guests were here actually for his presentation, and I'm going to call them back in right now. That's why I stood
Surprise.
They all want you to vote no.
Actually, Barry's going to present. Items B and C are closely related or interrelated, and Barry can explain the need for them. This is something that he and I have worked on together in concert with your council president to try and move this forward.
Thank you, Ed. Mr. Cook.
Good evening, Town Council President and fellow councilors. I bring before you this evening an amendment to the salary ordinance 2019 for the Wastewater Department. It is the creation of a new position that will help me fill a huge void in my department since January and have so far been unsuccessful doing. For those of you who have tried to find good help, like my fellow department heads and I have found out this year, it is extremely hard to get good qualified candidates for job positions. I am asking that you would please consider this small change to the ordinance to help me get my department back on track the second half of this year. I have a candidate who is ready to go. I am not requesting any new funds for this position, but will simply be reappropriating funds from the unfilled position over to cover this, and I'll be glad to take any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Barry?
Makes sense to me.
Then I'd like to make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Vice President Traylor. Just beat you in, Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion to introduce ordinance number 2019-14 on first reading passes with a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. If it pleases this council, and given that Mr. Cook has a candidate ready, and I know how hard it is to find candidates, I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules so we can get this done tonight and he can do this higher. Are there any seconds on that motion to suspend the rules? Second
Third.
second from Vice President Traylor. All in favor on suspending the rules?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. Are there any motions then on final? I won't dominate all the firsts, but
Move to approve it.
I've got a first from Councilor Spies. Second from Councilor Suarez. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Ordinance number 2019-14 is adopted by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Barry, go get your person.
Can I vote yes, yay?
What's that?
Can I vote also yay? Thank you. Thank you all very
You
much.
can't vote, but you can celebrate.
I do want the record to reflect that I voted yay. I just don't think I got close enough to the mic on that one.
But duly noted. And Barry, stay up there because we've got something else here for you. It looks like it's a consideration of a reappropriation resolution reallocating $31,500 in the wastewater department from the chief operator position to the plant and life station maintenance position. This is resolution number 2019-06 and sounds very related to what we just did. But anything else you would like to add to what that description is?
Nothing else that I'd like to add. That is exactly what it's doing, so.
Very good. Any other questions for Barry on that component piece?
So is somebody taking a pay cut to hire this new person?
No. Nobody's taking a pay cut to hire, no. This is a vacant position. It's been vacant since January and just have had zero luck.
And so we're increasing the salary in order to, what are we doing?
We are decreasing the
We're
salary.
decreasing the salary
This new
because-
position will have
okay.
a decreased salary compared to the chief operator position.
So
that we're
just
taking the money from.
reclassifying?
Yes, ma'am.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Any motions on this? It'll be awkward if you don't do this one. after approving it. We've got first from Councilor Spies.
Second.
Second from Councilor Suarez, just beat you in. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Resolution number 2019-06 passes with a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. You're done, Barry. Good job. Last on new business, I believe, yes, is a consideration of an additional appropriation resolution G.O. refunding bond series 2017. This is a public hearing. This is resolution number 2019-07. Deputy Mayor Mitro, would you like to comment on this one, please?
I will be very succinct. Mark Adam is here from Crow should you have any detailed questions. We have a bond that is coming, is at its very end. We have cash on hand. We have the payment that needs to be made in January of 2020 that we would like to make, cash we currently have available in 2019 to get it off the books, hence the additional appropriation of funds to accomplish that.
Questions for Deputy Mayor Mitro?
So we're moving money from one fund to the other in order to offset the deficit in that second fund? Is
No,
that correct?
there's no deficit. What we typically have is the very final payment of this bond would be in January 2020. We have reserve money available currently, and in order to save interest and get it off the books, we'd
I
like to
see.
pay it off this year.
I bought that one.
No. This is a public hearing. I have proof of publication. I will open the public hearing. If anyone wants to talk about this agenda item, please make your way up to the front. All right. I will close the public hearing. No shenanigans back there. Any other questions before we take a motion on this?
I move approval.
Got a first from Councilor Suarez.
Second.
Second from Councilor Spies. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Resolution number 2019-07 passes with a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Any other matters any other councilor would like to bring up this evening? All right. I will make a motion to approve the claims.
Second.
Is that Councilor Suarez again? You're quick on the draw. I love it.
I am. I want to go.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, claims are approved by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. I will also make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There we go. From Councilor Hopper. We got her in. All in favor?
I just, you got
Aye.
it, man.
All opposed?
No. Aye for the,
Aye for the
first time.
adjourning.
Yes.
Okay, thank
All
goodness.
right, we're going to start this whole thing over. Bring everybody back in.
We are adjourned by a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Please stick around. There's a few things to sign. The next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Monday, June 17th, 2019 at 7:30 a.m. right here in the Zionsville Town Hall Council Chambers. Thank you, folks.